Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Just before we get started, this should be an interactive experience. So if you have any questions or you'd like to make a comment, please do, and I will try and bring some to the surface. Please be respectful of each other in the comments. And if you think you might like to come on the show yourself, then please do feel free to get in contact. My details on the channel's About page. Next week, we'll be talking to Matthew Venn about designing ASICs, possibly some music, that sort of thing. But today's guest is Debra, aka GeekMomProjects. Hello, Debra.
Hi, Addie.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, my full name is Debra Ansell. When I first picked my online moniker, GeekMomProjects, many years ago, I really started with my kids' projects, and that's how GeekMomProjects. I like to say that's my origin story.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
I tell my middle son, and we can talk about that in a bit, that he's responsible for my origin story. And it's fine. And at the time, I think I was more worried about internet privacy than I am now. I've found, fortunately, the maker community is such a friendly space. I'm fine. I find that I don't have the fear of sharing my actual name, but it is funny when I get emails addressed to Dear Geek or.
Yes, they've got that information from somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah. So that happens.
Yeah. So I think we were talking about expanding on your beginnings then. So you were a physics major, you were a software engineer, and then you had kids, and you got into the sort of the more physical electronics with your son. Do you want to expand on that?
Yes, absolutely. I've always loved science. Undergrad majored in physics and mathematics. And I used to say I really liked math because there was an answer and you could find it, and that was it, which is not the same as engineering, and which I didn't get into until much later. I went to grad school in physics, decided, no, I really don't want to stay in academia. And while I like the material, the study's not for me. Had learned to code in graduate school for doing all my data analysis, ended up coming back right about the time of the internet boom. So got a job, several jobs that ended up in an internet startup. The internet bust came just as I had my first child, and it became a really good time just to stay home and raise kids because it was not a family-friendly occupation. So I really took about 8 years, about 10 years kind of off from hardcore science. I did a lot of kids science and kids parties. When I say hardcore, I mean anything that really used, high school level or up skills. And my 8-year-old, but my middle son was a born engineer. And from 5 years on, you could put him in his room with a Lego kit and he'd come out like 4 hours later with something incredible and then just sit there until he did it. So he, of his own accord, asked for Lego Mindstorms robotics for his 8th birthday. And
amazing. I have very fond memories of that from childhood.
I'm an enormous fan. I just cannot say enough good things. And so he got the kit, and I had never seen, programmable robotics or anything like that before. And we found out from a friend that the first Lego League is a competitive but cooperative robotics team league. And there was no team in our area, but given my background as a software engineer, I figured I could coach the team. So I started it, and it was fun. My son was, they were 8, 9, and 10 when we started. And the key to being a good coach is that the kids are supposed to discover the things on their own. You're just there to kind of, keep them from veering. Yes, keep them from going
this way, nudge them that way. Yeah.
Yes. But I was so jealous because I thought what they were doing was so much fun. I wanted to do it. And there were times I would, I was holding myself back. I'm like, no, try it this way. And of course you can't. And so I expressed this to somebody else who coached robotics, and they said, oh, well, if you like Lego Mindstorms, you should look into Arduino. And I'd never heard of it. I did fortunately have a little bit of exposure to, I'd done programming in C++, so it wasn't that unfamiliar. And I'd had in college and grad school kind of the theoretical underpinnings of electronics. I'd taken, I knew V equals IR, Kirchhoff's law, but I'd only done the bare minimal labs in terms of electronics, no real soldering. So I got started. Actually, the first few things I did were wearable circuits. was just sewing an LED onto a lily pad and
conductor thread and things.
Conductor
amazing
thread, yes. and quickly ran into the limitations there. I'm sure you'll have a link to my blog somewhere. I think I started with a few LEDs, and then immediately said, "Well, let's make a matrix." And turns out you can multiplex a conductive thread matrix, but it's hard. It's harder with conductive thread than it would be with regular thread. So
Sure.
it all kind of grew from there. And I told my son, this is my origin story, it's him with Lego Mindstorms. And I was just fascinated by the possibilities of physical computing and just the creativity it offered. And somebody asked me recently, so what, before you got into electronics, like, were you always this creative? And the answer was, I had ideas, but I didn't have the tools. I'm not artistic.
Yeah. Okay.
And, and I didn't know, this was my medium,
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, electronics and LEDs and building and CAD. And it turned out it was really a great way to express myself.
So just looking behind you, you've got some fantastic things up.
Thanks,
You've
yes.
got that big 2D array. You've got your blob. It's a little bit washed out in the video, but it's there. It's happy.
I know. He's very happy. Yes, I know. He's hard to see, but yes.
It all looks fantastic. And I would say very definitely artistic. It is.
It's amazing. There's a whole community of people. The nice thing about making and finding your community, especially with the LEDs, is nobody wonders why my first thought upon seeing something new is like, oh, I could put LEDs in. They don't ask why. It's a wonderful community of people who kind of understand your quirks, I suppose.
And even, I suppose, with the more formal sort of, Raspberry Pi and things, but when you first get your LED blinking on a Raspberry Pi, that's exciting as well. Just
it is. Well, I see there's a reason the Bible begins, "Let there be light."
Fair enough. Yeah, it's the making something happen in the real world, I think, is super magical. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, that's the Internet of Things is such a wonderful. That's on steroids. That's a feeling on steroids because you're making it happen and you're making it happen somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So you've done some teaching with your son, and now actually you're still quite involved with teaching kids as well. I think you were talking about how you start off meeting as sort of a summer camp type thing, and the kids just wanted to carry on. They kept coming back for more.
Yes. No. It's really. I've learned more from them. I know it's a cliche. It's such a cliche, but it is absolutely true. I've learned more from teaching than my kids have learned from me because I don't have a pedagogical background. I mean, obviously raising kids was an experience, but God bless all teachers. It is hard work, and I didn't know, much about it. But as I worked with my kids, with birthday parties in school, and then my son hit middle school, and the robotics was his thing. He didn't want me, he was doing it at school,
okay,
and so I was a bit, which is great and appropriate, but I had this interest and I wanted to share it. So I managed to find a local nonprofit that brings science curriculum to underserved Los Angeles elementary schools. And it was just fortuitous that they were looking to add a coding curriculum just as Microbit came out. And they said, what, I tried an Arduino project first. There is actually a drag and drop Arduino interface, I think Ardublocks.
Okay.
And I made it work, but it was hard. And then they said, could we expand on this? And I said, I don't know. And then I said, wait, I remember this thing I saw called Microbit, and took a deep dive, and it was perfect. It was really somebody, I think Helen Lee, who everybody knows, is a wonderful maker and inspirational and incredibly creative, told me that the thing about Microbit is it is designed for education. That's what it does. And that was why it was so, but at the same time, it's this incredibly powerful engine.
Now, this is the thing. I remember when it first came out, I was looking at it going, I don't quite understand. It's sort of a small 2D array and some buttons, and you get into it and you have a look, and actually it's got Bluetooth and all these other things. And I just had no idea when I first saw it. It's amazing.
That's right. You take a room full of, I mean, I can have a Microbit powering any of these projects and I can take, it's actually, I've learned a lot. I think I'm veering from where I was going, but
don't worry.
Just, because I created a Microbit accessory board, and along with that, you can create extensions for the microbit coding system.
Okay.
And I'd never, I wrote code for a company, but I'd never kind of published my own code. But I created they had the best documented instructions I have ever seen ever anywhere. Whoever put them together, thank you. And I was able to put together my own coding extension, a TypeScript base, which I didn't know. I learned this all to do that, and created an extension. I went through the approval process. It's an official approved extension. You can search for it. It
Well
was
done.
very
Yeah,
exciting for me.
fantastic.
So I, and I feel I'm part of this open source collaboration now that I've done this, and it's such a great, exciting feeling. And I learned, at a much higher level because I got involved with microbit.
That's the thing. And a lot of these beginning projects like Arduino as well, you start off with the foundation, you make an LED blink, but they have so much ability to take you forwards and expand, and how deep do you want to go almost, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, the rabbit hole goes all the way down. And well, that's it. And starting with Arduino, again, I'm going to veer a little bit because you made me think of something, is that, I was very comfortable with Arduino for a long time, and I recently took a wonderful embedded systems class because I was curious about, I'm very comfortable with Arduino. I love CircuitPython because it's fast and it's easy. But I know there's a layer below. There's timers, and there's, interrupts, and there's registers. And, I knew kind of what they were, but and you get there and it can blow your mind. Like, there's more possibilities. It's harder. It's much harder. And I probably won't spend a lot of time in that path because I like, the instant feedback. But yeah, you realize that, there's just different, you can take it any direction you want, and you can, dive into so many different areas of physical computing, making, coding, all these things at different levels, at different, at different techniques, and learn something. Even if you know a platform, you can use it in a different way and learn something new.
Absolutely. I was going to say, if you have different interests, you don't have to do, your end goal doesn't have to be to get electronics. It could be to make something blinky. It's, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot about, I've learned a lot about which LED strips you can fold and which you can't. I mean, just things like that, because I keep sticking them in my clothing, and some of them hold up and some don't. Yeah, so all these things, right? All these things are making, all these things are learning, and all these things have value to know.
Fantastic. So well done with that. Yeah. So we have possibly a little exciting thing to show everybody. You mentioned it on Twitter earlier.
Yes.
And that is, do you want to introduce it? It's
sure. I have been my recent
on screen. Here we go.
Yep, there we are. So my recent obsession has been experimenting with folding 3D prints. I don't know if the focus is it
looks okay. Yeah.
Yep. And I started with because I saw somebody else. That's the whole beauty of sharing. I saw somebody else, Chris Miller, had created a folding case, I think, for something. And I said, and of course my mind started to race about, well, what else could you fold? And I created a dodecahedron, which I actually don't have here, but this is a rhombic. I did several attempts now at a rhombic dodecahedron. A regular dodecahedron turns out to be much, much easier to design because all the angles are the same. So I started.
So for those of us who aren't so great at geometry, can you clarify the difference between rhombic dodecahedron and just a normal dodecahedron?
Yes. I guess I'm not going to try to mess with the light because something will fall down. But a dodecahedron is a 12-sided polyhedron. And in a regular dodecahedron, the sides are regular pentagons. And again, I don't have mine on me, but if you check my Twitter feed, there's a recent here's one. Yeah. I did this one. I put eyeballs in it just because it was kind of fun.
Oh yes, I saw. Yeah.
So you can kind of see that was a little fun. But it is, again, all the angles are the same. So folding everything into everything else was much more straightforward. I found it much more challenging to design a rhombic dodecahedron where the angles come together. The angles between the sides are all the same, but the way they come together, if you start out with a flat folding print, is not. And also just folding, you don't see a lot of builds where you fold 3D prints.
So I saw your original folding, and That just made me nervous.
Yeah.
Surely it sort of comes apart, or
It does. Well, that's exactly it, right? Yes, it absolutely does. So my first prints were in PLA,
Mhm.
and I found that it worked, but it didn't hold. If I had, I of course tried to put LEDs in my early prints. So I
Of
started with
course,
this
yeah.
was a stellated dodecahedron here, or was this the icosahedron? This must be the icosahedron. And I of course put LEDs inside but opening and closing it too often, yes,
Mhm.
would cause the PLA to break. But PETG is the
Ah,
wonder filament. I'm a huge fan of PETG now.
okay.
And I did promise that I would try to assemble this in real time, so I don't
Go for
know
it.
how it's going to go, but
Shall I be quiet while you pull it off the plate?
oh, yeah, there does it can't well, oh, I might have to hold this up to my face. I'll move my face closer so you can hear it. If there's I
Sure.
don't know what sounds it's gonna make. This is all kind of new to me. But this is a
Okay.
two-tone one, so let's see if we can hear it. I don't know if you got that, but let's see.
Oh, that came off nicely.
Yeah, so
Well
yeah,
done.
this is kind of I like the look of that. It's two-tone with a black. That's the nice thing about folding it printing it, as a single flat layer is you can get the
Yeah.
two-tone.
So can you
Alright,
talk
let's
to us
see.
about the two-tone? How did that go down? Have you got dual extruders, or did you sort of swap out the filament halfway?
Swapped out the filament halfway.
Okay.
I had recently, fairly recently, was contacted by Matt Stultz from, he works for Prusa, and he said, "Wow, you do such cool things, don't you? Do you ever 3D print?" And I said, "Well, I took apart my hot end on my old laser on my old 3D printer a while ago and couldn't get it back, and he said, "Well, how about, maybe we can get you a Prusa?" And I said, "Yes, please." And yeah, and I guess it had been a couple years since I'd really gotten into it, and I guess the technology had evolved, and this is I love my Prusa. It just works.
Mhm.
And the slicer is really nice. It's just putting in a filament change is just literally is a button click, and that's all there is to it. It really takes care of itself. It gives you all the
Amazing. So
prompts to
so
feed
it
it.
sort of it pauses mid-print, and you swap out the
Yes,
filament, and it
it
carries on? Yeah.
it pauses mid-print, it ejects the old filament, and then it waits for you and tells you what to do. So there's really hard
Amazing.
and it beeps at you. It's really hard to mess up. It was designed for makers like me who forget. Alright, so I'm gonna try to fold this now,
Go
and
for
we'll
it. Yeah,
see what
yeah.
happens. I found that the easiest way to start with just the outside ones. I don't think it's gonna make such a good noise, unfortunately.
And so these pieces, you can see them meshing together. They actually clip
Yeah.
together, do they? Sort of a
Yeah.
nice friction fit. Yeah.
Yes, it is all yeah, the first time I did it
Amazing.
yeah, these are working. This is actually working really nicely. I'm gonna jinx it by saying that, but, um, let's see. There we go. So you can see, oh, it's looking good. Of
Yeah.
course, I think the last one I did, I did it fits so nicely, I can't take it apart. It actually which is okay, but, I'm definitely gonna make one and put LEDs inside at some
Of
point.
course.
So, yeah, this is good. I'm really enjoying this. I put by the way, if anybody's watching this, I have put the, design oh, yeah, this is really good. Wow, okay, that was
Look
very
at that.
satisfying. That was so
That's amazing.
satisfying.
And it looks like a 3D cube as well, when you
It
get
does,
through the
right?
edges. How cool is that?
Yes, I know, I don't apparently rhombic dodecahedrons have a big fan club, which I did not know about because,
Okay.
I didn't really know what they were until I made my dodecahedron and someone said, "Oh, rhombic dodecahedrons are my favorite, you should try it," and I said so I looked it up, of course, and then had to try it. That was really,
Brilliant.
really satisfying. Yeah,
That
wow,
would
I'm
together
definitely
so
gonna try it
well.
again. Yeah, but it's on, printables.com site. If you look at my Twitter feed, I've got a link there, and, I'm GeekMomProjects on printables too, so you can find it there if you wanna make your own. But I do recommend the color change. I think that's a very nice
Yeah.
effect. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
alright.
Thank you for
Er
assembling that.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me. I'm thrilled it worked a lot. There's always a jinx to doing things live, but apparently,
Oh, that looked
we're
really
not
good,
jinxed.
really painless.
Yeah,
So the
it
the
was.
the the clips, the snaps, I
Mhm.
don't know what to call them, the press fits,
The
that was
tabs, yeah.
tabs, yeah, that was something that you designed and presumably had a bit of iteration to get it just nicely snapping, and
Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
think this is make number 6, I think, and
Mhm.
the first few wouldn't fold at all. I had started with one of the things I found, is that I got lucky, I think, with my choice of dodecahedron as the first
Do you
build
mind do you mind
because
holding up your eyes to the camera just so that
yeah,
we
that's
can see
probably
it
gonna
nice
be
and
yes. Oh,
yeah,
wow,
look at
that's
that.
so much better. Oh, wow, yes. So, a
That's awesome.
dodecahedron, yeah, came out, it turned out to be really, really easy to fold.
Mhm.
And I think I got, again, very, very lucky that it worked out that way. It worked really the first or second time. I think the second. But the trick with a rhombic dodecahedron was that it had these longer, I had a longer, thinner side, and it would tend to flex.
Mhm.
So it didn't, when I would try to force the tabs and slots together, this has tabs and slots. These have two, I had to set back the inner portions of the sides and extend the tabs a little further, like further from the inner walls.
Okay.
So the inner walls are set back further from the edges of each rhombus, which forms a side. It makes more sense if you look at the 3D model. But so yeah, so what was happening is I would try to fold it together, and these sides that are longer were structurally less rigid and would flex, and it was much, much harder to force the tabs together.
Okay.
So yeah, this took a number of iterations, but this one I'm really happy with it. This seems really good, and I may go back and try to redesign the, I'm going to try to do a series of these, I think, when I find the time. So I think I'm going to try to go back and redo this one, because I think this is a better snapping mechanism than this. Although this one makes an incredibly satisfying sound when you snap it. This one doesn't, but this works better.
Yeah,
so
fair enough. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
So the when you're designing this, do you design it in the flat, or do you design it as a piece and then get your CAD software to unfold it effectively? Or
I don't know how to do that.
I me either.
No, but I actually no, because you take advantage. I mean, I don't know. I'm relatively new. I've done a lot of 2D CAD up until fairly recently, because I worked with a laser cutter. Most of my projects were laser cut, and I got very good. Actually, that was, I think, helpful, because when you use a laser cutter, and I designed everything in 2D in Inkscape, but a lot of the things I assembled, like that octahedron behind me, like that, that LED octahedron, it's in a sound reactive mode. I did a lot of 2D design, which was designed to fold into 3D. So I was kind of used to doing it that way. That's how I see the designs. So I kind of, after having that experience, I start intuitively in 2D. I only recently picked up kind of 3D CAD, maybe a few months ago, 6 months. Because I realized I was paying for Fusion 360 and didn't know how to use it. And I got into Tinkercad, which was fun, and I was starting to hit the limitations, and I really wanted fillets. So I'm like, I need, like, it's all fine, but then when you start 3D printing it, then that's when you want your fillets.
Right.
So that has been a very big iterative process. And yeah, I just plunged. My learning technique, I know people keep asking me, are there videos you watch and things like that? And my learning process is much more dive right in, try it, fail, learn from that, rather than
I'm a big
I don't have
fan
the
of that as well.
And then you need to really want to learn something. It has to be something you want to make. I can't run through a tutorial that creates a project that I don't want to do. I really need to have a motivation to learn.
So I think we can see your rainbow on the desk there. Is that the laser cut?
That is laser cut. Yes. This is one of the first projects I designed with my laser cut. I have to say, it is my favorite build, honestly, because I'm just very because if you see right now, it was laser cut. It's a rainbow. Every 30 seconds, it goes to a color that reflects the weather outside. It's the color. I published this one in Make magazine. I think anybody can find this online. And yeah, it just kind of makes rainbows make you happy. They do. And I use it every morning. I glance at it before I go out to walk the dog, and I can know if I need a jacket or not. And it actually has, when it rains, which never happens in Southern California, but when it rains, it has a different rain pattern, and I will never see the snow pattern, but one exists.
You have to bring it to England. Actually, we're not very good at snow here either anymore. So.
No, but there's some you could. So I could fake it and reset the zip code or just reset the location to somewhere in England. I could know. I could have an England rainbow, certainly. I would get lots of rain, yes.
We've actually just had a comment from Scott. He suggests that, I'm not sure if you're aware, I don't know what's going on, but Fusion 360 has a full-featured hobbyist version, which is free.
I did not know that, and that is good to know.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I already had it as a part of a bundle with Eagle CAD, so I tend to use what I have. But
fair enough.
So it's been good. I know people have their preferences, but it's working well for me. So
brilliant. Very good. So would you like to talk about anything in particular behind you? You've got your blob, obviously,
Oh
but
my goodness.
I
Well,
don't know if you want to talk about algorithms on your 2D array or
well, I would certainly be happy. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's so much behind me. First of all, I just want to talk about how this shows that LEDs are a very diverse medium. Because I've got some of the things. I'll take you on a little visual tour if that's okay.
Go for it.
Of
Yeah,
kind of
please
what's
do.
back there.
Yeah.
So I think you can actually kind of see some of the phases I went through. So these were all like kind of discoveries of different techniques I could use with LEDs and acrylic and a lot of edgelit. I really do view light as an artistic medium. I love, LED displays, and uh, m- the way I would like to use it is I would like to kind of spread the light out. I want to almost paint with light, which is why I love that pixelated grid back there because it's diffuses each pixel
Yeah.
just a little bit. And so different things I've done. I'm going to roll this up here just a little bit. You can see there's a
Oh, nice. Yeah.
looks yeah, but you can see when I connections. Oh, that was one connection needs to be resoldered. That's a bummer. But you
No one
but
else
you
will
can
notice,
see.
don't worry.
No, nobody can see that. Oh, that's such a bummer. But that's okay. That's the problem is every once in a while you pull out an old project and realize it's not going to work until you fix it. But so I different things I have done, different media was I hadn't seen this before. And that's one of the reasons the rainbow was so exciting was I wondered a lot of my projects come from me saying, well, what would happen if I tried X, Y, or Z? And 90% of the time that fails, by the way, but every once in a while, it's a really, really cool result. And that was this rainbow and that shelf with the three edgelit pieces down there.
Oh, they're edgelit as well, are they? Okay.
They are. They're I won't pull it over because something will break. But the LED strip, it's actually kind of a jigsaw cut LED jigsaw cut piece of acrylic. So there's kind of an acrylic frame with the smaller pieces cut out and a very narrow LED strip. Oh, and the clock as well. That's the clock works that way as well, is wound through actually inside the LED sheet. So the LED strip is perpendicular to the sheet, but it's actually inside the sheet. So I use a 1/4-inch thick acrylic and like a 5 or 6 millimeter LED strip, which fits inside. And you can, if you plan it carefully enough, you can have it so each little piece has its own LED and it illuminates and fills the total internal reflection fills the what piece that each LED is attached to, and you're painting. It's paint by numbers with LEDs.
So
and that was a technique.
Sorry, I was going to say my only real experience with LEDs and transparent or semi-transparent acrylic and plastics is light pipes and stuff. And I know that they can be so painful to work with because you get a lot of bleed between. But all of the things we're seeing behind you, they seem to have really good definition. Like that's fantastic.
But there's a trick to that, and that's what I was so excited because I started off with because that was actually something I discovered during the Rainbow Project as well. So because there are 7 LEDs on each side. And at the base of the rainbow, and yes, you would normally these colors are pretty crisp between the arcs, but what I discovered was I started by I wanted to get it crisper, and I'm just like, what could help? And it was a real brainstorming thing, and it was one of those things I think came to me like oh, let's try this. Was I put copper tape between the edges. And then it evolved from there, and I realized I didn't even need to put copper tape. I have silver Sharpies work really, really well. If you color the edges with silver Sharpies, it reflects the light back and stops the bleed. So each of the pieces, I laser cut the pieces, color the edges with silver Sharpie, and put it back, except for the place, obviously, where the LED slots in, and it works really well. And as far as I know, I invented that technique, and I'm very proud of myself for it.
Congratulations!
It wasn't, but it was exciting. It's that excitement of discovery, like, oh wow, that's neat, that works. That solves my problem. And
so was that quite frustrating before you came to that conclusion, I guess, where you were making these things and they weren't quite working potentially, or
they
actually
weren't
were
working
they
as well as I wanted. I mean, it can always work better. Yeah, it's hard to know. That's the downside, right? I said I'd liked math growing up because there's one answer and you get there and you know it and you're done. And of course, with kind of engineering and making, there's no clear end point, right? There's always room for experimentation and improvement. So yeah, it wasn't, I don't know that it was frustrating. I frequently as actually happened with the rhombic dodecahedron, I frequently like intuit there's an answer. There's a solution here. I'm sure there must be. I just don't know what it is. And it's a challenge. It's a puzzle, and it's a challenge, and I find that motivating more than anything. So no, it wasn't frustrating per se. I found it kind of an interesting, like, can I do this? Can I do this? You know, it's frustrating when you like when you don't find it, but the
When you have
feeling
a
of
really
actually getting
fixed
there.
vision in mind and never
Yes,
quite managed to make it happen. But
correct.
it sounds
Yeah.
like you got to your goal and then it got better and better since past that almost. Is that right?
But yeah, no, I got to the goal here. Right, that's exactly it. I think the rainbow came first, and then I started experimenting with, you know, these are kind of freeform pieces. Then I experimented with cutting out puzzle pieces, and yeah, and then I this may have come first. The grid up there with the little snake going back and forth.
Oh,
That
yeah?
was a slightly different. Those are actually translucent acrylic rather than clear acrylic, and um, yeah, I think I like to take a new concept and kind of beat it to death. Like, let's see what happens if, and let's keep trying it. Yeah, and that was so those were the edgelit embedded. What did I call it? Inner glow. I called it inner glow, where you embed
That
the
makes
LED
sense.
strip
I
inside
like the
the
name,
acrylic.
yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I was really happy. You know, I, I'm an old time LED person. I remember way back when, you know, when we were all we had were LED strips. And then of course they started coming out with the LED strings. And I said, what can I do with and I don't this is where I credit you get a lot from working with children, because I said, what happens if you take an LED string and attempt to make string art out of it? Like, why not? And turned out, as you can see, actually really pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. And I don't think I would have thought of string art if it wasn't a craft I had done with children. And that was, you know, another interesting what if that led somewhere interesting. I think what was actually kind of interesting, the reason that one's broken was I actually cut, it was a fixed address LED string, and I cut it because you can use kind of a signal power and ground bus. You don't have to have it all wired together.
Okay.
So I didn't do the best job soldering one of the pieces, and that just I have to go back and fix that. But and then it's also much easier to do it that way, because you don't have to worry about where your pieces can start. You can cut your pieces when they start and end at the right place. Whereas there's a little more of an if you want your LEDs to form a regular pattern in the string art, there's math involved.
Yeah, this is going to be something I wanted to ask, because, you know, I'd approach a problem like the one just behind you on your right, and, you know, it's a matter of I want the LED to be here, but how do I achieve that if I'm just going for a continuous like wrap or whatever it is you do? And
I have a, you know, if you want to, if you'll humor me for a second, I
sure.
came up with a processing script to emulate it. Let me see if I can. That was actually, it was great because I actually use this as actually in the summer camp too to show the kids. Let me hang on as a process.
Yeah, sure.
It's p5.js. So let me pull that up, and I'll show you. Here, I have to log in. 1 second. Editor, and it was it's the kind of thing. So this turned out to be a really I'm wondering that's going to come. Two-factor authentication is going to kick in a second, which is awesome. Oh, here we go. And actually, you know what was fun about this is somebody came up with it. I think it was Garrett Mays. I'm not sure. Said, "Oh, what you're doing is hacrame." It was like not macrame, hacrame. Let me see if I can find the right one. Let's run. Is that it? Yes. Okay. So here, I'm going to
put your screen on. Is that okay?
Yeah. You can see it? Yes, right there. So this is, I came up with a model that you tell it in the code. You know, you can figure out how many nodes you have. You tell it the spacing, and it will, and you even figure out where the first LED is, how far the first LED is from the first starting point, and you know how many LEDs per segment. And it was actually really great. And I used this actually with my kids to teach them a little bit of math, because I said, well, look, more for string art. I wasn't going to teach them LEDs, but so I did a version without the LEDs, and I said, you know, like notice that for some versions of like how many numbers you skip to the next, you know, from one node to the next node with your string. I noticed that some of them cover all the numbers and some of them don't. And we did a little educational thing about it. it was a challenge for them about, you know, a number of factors and things like that, because you only skip if there's common divisors for the number of nodes you have and the number you're skipping. And that was a fun little exercise. But yeah, this I love computer simulations too. I think this is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. So here have we got different colors indicating different indexes on the string, or
correct? Yes. Well, because how many LEDs per set? Each LED per segment. So this one has 4 LEDs per segment. So
I see. Okay.
There's blue, red, green, and yellow. So recommend.
Okay. That's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. That was fun. Yeah.
That's very cool. So going through your things behind you still, you've covered the 2D acrylics, you covered the string, the
okay, so yes. So two specific things I got there were you can see this back to geometry, like the rhombic dodecahedron they're hyperboloids, and those are fiber optic. You're talking about light pipes. Those are hyperboloids of fiber optics, and I did a lot with fiber optics. I tried to use them a lot in wearables. The difficulty is that, first of all, it's hard to hold them against an LED. Secondly, it is what was the second?
I imagine they're quite good at snapping.
No, they're very flexible.
Okay.
Oh no, they work. They're really they have a beautiful. They're beautiful. The light, the illuminated glow is quite beautiful. But they're thick and they don't bend super well.
I see. Okay.
People have done some amazing art projects with them, but it was, I'd play with them, and I'd put them away for a while, and I don't know why I was looking. Oh, you know what? This was another string art inspired project, because when I was looking at the string art, that's 2D string art, but there's 3D string art. And somebody pointed out that there are a hyperboloid, and also there's another shape that I'm forgetting, are three-dimensional geometric shapes where actually at every point on the shape, there are two tangent lines that within the shape itself. So it's all straight lines, which is perfect because every line in these hyperboloids is a straight line, and the frame for these hyperboloids is half of an octahedron. So I had to design the octahedron. I ran the LED strip around the outside, and
starting to feel like I should have brushed up on my geometry before coming.
I only know. Trust me, I don't usually know this offhand. I mean, I've learned. Wikipedia has wonderful entries for pretty much every individual polyhedron, and I've learned a great deal. Like I've learned what stellated means. I've learned what. It was really interesting. I've always loved math, so I learned that the difference between a Hamiltonian path and an Eulerian path. So I will transition. This is all related. Yeah. Sorry, it's going to be a big stream of LED consciousness, but the infinity octahedron. And the reason I did an octahedron versus the more traditional infinity cube is I wanted to run an LED strip around every edge. Well, of all the I think it's the Platonic polyhedra, of all the regular polyhedra, only the octahedron has an Eulerian path, which is a path that traverses every edge exactly once.
And it's the postman problem
without breaking. So if you want to do a cube, it's a big pain. You have to cut it in like 3 places. It is it's similar to except you're not looking to minimize the distance. You're looking to cover all the edges. A Hamiltonian path means you hit every vertex exactly once, and an Eulerian path is you cover every edge exactly once. And the octahedron is the only one that of the regular solids that covers every edge at least once. Sorry, it's trivia, right?
No.
I'm excited to share that knowledge. No, I didn't know it. This all the things you learn from making, right? I wouldn't have known that. But it was practical. It's practical knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I commented on your headband earlier as well. It's fantastic. I noticed it a couple of minutes after we started talking, and it just sort of caught my eye. And I think you said this was one of the first things you made?
Yes, it's one of my early wearables. It was, I think, right when Adafruit had just started coming out. It's powered by a Gemma M0, which I can't really pull up, but you can see like the power switch here is actually the Gemma, and you can see the plug is the battery plugs into the Gemma's power, and it's really, Gemma was designed for wearables, and it's wonderful. And at this point, I didn't yet have a laser cutter, but what I did, and I'd started to see them around, and I started to, oh, no, my hair, sorry, we're gonna have messy hair.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I didn't have a laser cutter, and they're very expensive, but I kind of looked longingly at the projects you could do with them. But then I found out about vinyl cutters, and I said, there's a lot, that's close, right? There's a lot you can do with a vinyl cutter. So I thought, maybe if I buy a vinyl cutter, it's certainly, 1/8 the price. I will, that will be enough that I can, and I really did. It was wonderful for wearables and actually you can't cut vinyl in a laser cutter because it releases chlorine gas, and that's bad for everybody.
I have to say that things like laser cutters, I don't know about them enough to really comment, but they make me nervous. And from a off gassing and whatever else, you got ABS plastic. I'd love to put through the 3D printer because you can make things a little bit more temperature resilient and things, but at the same time, I'm not comfortable. Yeah.
You should be cautious, and you should probably be more cautious than I am. I've gotten comfortable through experience, I think. My first laser cutter was down in my garage. I bought it used. I'm veering off from the headband. I'm going to back up. No, that's okay.
Stick on the headband, yeah.
No, so let me start with the headband, though, because this was designed in CAD, in Inkscape, and I realized I don't know why the idea of a headband came up. I think, I just started working with LED strips, and the wearable, and the JAMA was just such a tempting project. And, I found this, vinyl that you could easily cut with the vinyl cutter, which certainly makes sense. And it was this was one of those surprisingly satisfying outcomes. It was surprisingly hard to make because it's two pieces which lace together. But because of the curve, the inner piece actually needs to be slightly shorter than the outer piece. And it took, speaking of iterations, and this was at the beginning of my kind of making wearables experience. It was dozens and literally dozens of iterations until I got something that I liked. And it took different experiences. I tried, of course, different patterns over the LEDs, and I tried, I think this one actually has a small mylar layer actually over the LEDs to help with the diffusion as well, below the vinyl. So I did dozens of these, and I was so excited when I finally got it working. And this was actually, I think, my first attempt at an educational wearable as well, because I just learned CircuitPython, and I learned it's so, I was so excited, like how easy it is to make LED patterns. This is wonderful. So I actually created, I'll see if I can pull that up on the screen. I actually created my own, and this was a tremendous learning experience, drag and drop CircuitPython LED CircuitPython pattern generator. So I really wanted to use this. It turned out it's still, for people who are, so I wanted to use this as kind of an educational thing. It turns out people are still a little scared by the concept of programming. Let me see if I can find, I'm going to have to, I'm going to pull it up. But I ended up doing some workshops where I had people lace these up, and I showed them how to program it. And pretty much everybody who came into my workshops who didn't know how to code before, like, coded it in the workshop and never coded it again. But I feel like I tried, and it was an interesting experience. And I love, it's a fun wearable. I think I did this so long ago. I think that I want to swap it out now. By the way, this pattern right now is Morse code. I can't remember the message.
I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah, that's Morse code. But I think I got to put it back in there with something Wi-Fi or Bluetooth enabled. Now they're so small and so easy to get, and I'm make it remotely programmable to respond to an app, or or make it sound controlled or something. I will probably revisit this at some point, and bring it into.
So is the headband based on, did you buy a plastic or cheapish headband off the shelf and wrap it up? Yeah.
Super cheap. You buy them in bulk. Well, and once I started doing workshops, AliExpress, bulk order, plastic headband, you can order the size, you learn, you get the sizes right. I know people 3D print them. I've never, some things are easier bought than made. And that was certainly one of them. But it's literally, I don't know if I posted the instructions for this online. I may have, but it literally is a headband, LED strip, and then a way to cover it. And there's probably multiple ways to cover it. This is what I came up with. There may certainly, anybody else who decided they want to make one, I bet there are a million ways to do this that look wonderful as well. And I'd love to see what somebody else. Well, people have certainly done it. I'm not the first, but I'm happy with my solution.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
was trying to come up with the programming website, and I'm trying to, what did I call it? Oh, I'm blanking now.
Don't worry.
It's okay.
Don't worry.
I'm not going to worry about it. You don't need to pull it up. Okay. So, and speaking of wearables, okay, since we got the time, can I talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Because
It's fantastic.
It is
It's
fantastic.
I mean, from here at least, the resolution, the clarity of the, I don't know what you call it, the pattern is amazing.
Yeah, it is. I love this. It's nice now. I started off literally with conductive thread, an Arduino lily pad, and a sewable LED.
Mhm.
And at this point, I really consider myself, and it's been over 10 years, and I feel like an expert on wearables. Not on everything, obviously, but I've done them and I've worn them, and I've certainly spent more time wearing LEDs than anybody I know, maybe Blue Man Group. I mean, in their show probably wears them longer, but I have a feel for, kind of what it's like to try to make LEDs work in clothing. And
Did you get lots of sort of looks and queries from people who see you wearing them, or is it a big talking point almost, or is it quite sort of?
Well, it depends what you're wearing, right? This is relatively subtle.
Okay.
I have all kinds of LED wearables. So actually, it's a running joke that I'll take in day-to-day life, again, I feel like this goes in with my origin story. I'm a suburban mom.
Mm-hmm.
And my aesthetic is, if you turn it off, nobody should know you've got a wearable on. And if I turn this off, nobody would look twice at this pendant or at this headband. And so I always like to go out with my wearables and tell my kids, if they misbehave, I'm going to turn it on and embarrass them. But they're older now, and they just roll their eyes at me, so which is fine. But this pendant is something I'm very excited about, because it's a collaboration with 2 other makers. And here's another one. I don't have the pieces individually, but the board is this wonderful LED. The board underneath has a 64 tiny 2020 LEDs in a Fibonacci spiral, which is, I've got this string art going, and Jason Kuhn, who runs Evil Genius Labs, has a beautiful series of boards in really wonderful shapes, most of which are based on the Fibonacci spiral, and others are other shapes. And there's something very appealing about the shape of a Fibonacci spiral. It's found in nature. It's the shape of a sunflower, the seeds in a sunflower. And it's related to the golden ratio, which, just everywhere in nature. So it's also the most efficient way, for example, to fill a sphere. If you do it in 3D, it's the most efficient way to evenly space points on a sphere or points in a circle.
Okay.
It's very interesting mathematically, but it also just, because of it has this intuitive appeal. So Jason made the board. Ben Henke, who has designed a controller called the Pixel Blaze, which I only found out about fairly recently, but I've got one of them controlling that octahedron right now. It's sound reactive, and one of them controlling that pixelated display behind me. And it's this amazing controller, but it's a development environment, and it's a real-time interactive programmer that you can. Most of these patterns back there, almost all the patterns are somebody else's wonderful work that I've stolen, but they put them out there for people to steal. And then, but you can also, it's so easy to go in and program. It's a wonderful learning experience. So you can just use it, and you can click. There's a little button on the back, and you can click through the patterns if you want, like this. Or I'll do it on this one. And then my contribution to this. My fire is sideways. I know I need to go and actually tweak the code, because my fire should be going up, not sideways, but that's on me. But my contribution was, so to 3D printing, was this battery holder that it works with. It's behind the neck, because something like this, again, with my experiences, you want your wearables to be small. You don't want to feel like you're wearing a big circuit board on your chest.
Yeah.
You can hide the battery behind your neck, and it's a magnetic clasp. So just simply, ta-da! By connecting it, it should turn on. Yep, there you go. It turns on, and then you can control. The interface is wonderful. I won't demo it now, but you can actually just get on the computer and you can click through the patterns with this. There's the controllers underneath this backplate, which I also designed. This is actually a practical use of. I'm gonna circle back now, because we were trying to come up with a way. obviously in a real wearable, again, if you're a maker, I will wear products that I wouldn't necessarily let other people wear because, I figure I'm willing to take the risk, but LiPo batteries,
Right.
there's some assumption of risk there. So we wanted to cover the electronics. So we were trying to design a back cover, but it was a tricky 3D print. And when I saw Chris Miller's folding print, this is actually a folding.
Is it really? Oh,
Well,
wow.
yeah, this one is. And then we ended up
That's awesome.
but we're having them 3D printed. So it turns out if you have them 3D printed, you can have it done with SLS,
Okay.
which then you don't have the overhang problem. So
Yep.
we didn't end up using that way. But the first few designs, yes, were actually a practical application of
Amazing.
folding 3D printed cover. So I was, again, that
Very
was a
neat.
solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a solution I was super, super proud of. It was, and my initial design had 2 pieces, and it was just kind of this, literally not thinking about anything. So I'm like, wait, what if I tried to fold? Could I do it in one piece? And it was really satisfying. So yeah, so we're making these and hope to sell them. It's interesting collaborating because I think, as Jason said, all of it's taking much, much longer than any of us would do. Jason and Ben both have stores to sell their things, and I have had a store. So when you do something by yourself, the decisions are much easier than when you collaborate. But it's really, really fun.
Yeah.
And to kind of work together, and I love the products. I'm a very small part because it's just the battery holder. This, I'm not doing the electronics on this. I have a really fun process, but this is my favorite wearable. I do wear it all the time. I wore it in Las Vegas the other weekend, and that's the perfect place for LED.
I was going to say,
yeah,
it sounds appropriate.
So I'm looking forward to. We're still we're still working on getting it together and out there, but soon, hopefully, very, very soon.
Yeah, got some love for your battery holder. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Wax.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have a version of this up on Printables. There's a Flex version. This version I haven't actually published the files for, but I'm probably selling these. So
it's difficult, isn't it, when you want to be able to share, but at the same time, where do you draw the line between open source and not so open?
It is it's a difficult process. I'm not. Sometimes I have held on to design. I think I usually end up realizing that it's not worth the trouble to try to sell it or make money for it. And then, of course, I'll immediately, just publish it if I think it's really good. But yes, there are times I'll hold on to an idea or a design, like, well, what do I want to do with it? Where should it go? Yeah.
Amazing. I guess as well, the fact that you've split the battery from the display or the visible part. I think the battery probably is the heaviest piece in that wearable.
Oh, yes.
So having it on the top of your neck, back of your shoulders, whatever you want to call it, is probably a really decent place for it to go.
It is actually pretty. You have to come up with the right balance. Like I did a lot of work. I learned a lot about battery size, things that I can discuss at great length that nobody will ever want to discuss is the number of the naming conventions and number of different cylindrical battery sizes. This is a 14250, but there's 14, there's 14440, one, there's a million, now I'm like, yes, you could, if you wanted to do the 16, what are the real 18650s are way too big. Yes, that would actually pull it down and have your up here. so, and then of course, the trade-off, of course, if you go smaller, it fits. If you do like one of these little small ones that are AAA size, it fits much more nicely. But of course, the power is not going to last as long. So it's all trade-offs, and I have explored really kind of there have been a lot of iterations of what seems like a relatively simple concept, but you have to explore all the possibilities. I do feel like I have optimized this design. I feel like every decision that's in here is a result of me attempting multiple alternatives and deciding, okay, this one's the best. I mean, I take, like, it's this little tiny thing that doesn't look like much, but I feel very kind of proud of it. Nonetheless.
It's always frustrating in a way because there's a lot of trade-offs. It can never be perfect. You can't have the big battery, which is small, for example, or the big capacity, which is small.
You can't now, but that's the thing. You always have it in the back of your head that technology may make it possible, because that happened to me with LED strings.
Okay.
I like a long time ago, I have a design that uses an LED string in a wearable, and it just but it had an LED strip, and the flexing, they'll eventually break. There's solder joints are weak, and I said, what they really need is this resin reinforced. They need to reinforce the LEDs with resin, and it took a couple of years, but I remember thinking that, and 2 years later, I'm like, oh, somebody did that. You know, they have these Christmas lights now that are everything's reinforced inside like a little resin
Yeah.
LED. So yeah, you wait long enough, things become possible that weren't before.
Fair enough. I think we're nearly at time. So
Yes.
if anybody watching has any questions, please feel free to sort of get them in. And while we're waiting, while we're sort of closing up, is there anything in particular you'd like to say or talk about or promote? Or
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for letting me talk about LEDs and all the things I like,
Ah,
because I love this. I get asked, you know, how do you get started in all this stuff? And people are like,
yeah,
oh, I
great
could never do
topic.
that. And you know, I certainly didn't set out to do this. This is not how I saw myself, you
Sorry,
know,
can I
10 years ago.
just break in for a second? Do
Yeah.
you have the lights on at the moment? And
No.
yeah,
No.
so something that I've experienced a couple of times is when you have a room full of LEDs like that, is the ambient lighting effectively from the LEDs is just so pleasant compared to it's just magical
Well,
almost.
it is, although, you know what the great irony, I don't leave these on because I'll find them when I'm working. I'll just stop and I'll just
Oh,
stare.
stare at them.
I'll put them on when I want to see something, or if
Yeah.
I'm in a Zoom or something like that. But I do find myself just kind of mesmerized by the patterns. But yeah, it's not how I set out. You know, these are all experiments, and I've had so much fun with it.
Mhm.
And in the end, it's turned out to be kind of practical because it's something people like and people want to do too, and people want to learn. And I just started out by experimenting, and really and like 90% of my ideas are bad. I've just been doing this long enough that I've got a lot of good ones that have come out of the 10% that aren't. So you know, you know, I'm as discouraged by failure as anybody else, but
Mhm.
I have this very ridiculously active brain that just keeps pumping out ideas, so I don't have time to dwell on the failures before a new possibility presents itself. And I think that if people tend to be afraid to get started in something, well, what if I fail? What if it's crap? And most of what I've done is crap. It doesn't matter. It's a numbers game. It doesn't matter. And I've
It's tricky because
learned every failure I've learned. Yeah.
yeah, I mean the tricky thing for me is that, as you say, a lot of things fail. I take photographs, for example. A lot of them don't see the light of day because
Right.
actually, you know, out of the thousands you're taking, a few of them are really good.
Yeah, that's why
And
digital photography is such a good thing,
oh,
right?
amazing! It's fantastic.
Unfortunately.
But the real frustrating thing from a beginner's point of view, I think, is that you don't see the failures. They don't make it out, and I don't know. It's something that I feel like
Yes.
we need to be more willing to talk about, more willing to show off. You know, I tried
Yes.
it, but it didn't
But
quite work. And
no, I really appreciate everybody who shows off their attempts that fail.
yeah,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's a problem. It's a much broader problem in like scientific journals because there's so many irreproducible results because people don't publish their
mhm,
failure. You know, you
yeah,
again, you learn when something's possible and something's not possible by doing it. Yeah, I agree. And of course I don't either. But I'll be honest, though, most of the time I don't want to take the time to type up a failure or
that's the
something
thing
like
as
that.
well. Yeah,
Yeah, you just want to
and
check it.
from your own point of view, you know, if you've done something which hasn't quite worked as planned, or if you see it as a failure, there's a lot of pressure to suppress it and ignore it and pretend it
Yes.
didn't happen almost. And that's
Yes.
something that I
Well
find
well, that's the
society wise is quite upsetting
yes.
almost. Yeah,
Well, there's the internet, you know, you can be perfect because you can edit yourself. You can edit
yeah,
your
yeah.
you can and social media, right. Social media, you create whatever narrative you want
That's
by
the thing.
posting and hiding. You know, nobody sees, you know, everybody else's process. You see whatever they show you of their process. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I mean, I'm also nobody wants to see a string. Like nobody really wants to see my process because there's a lot of four-letter words involved. And so you know, you have to, but the trick is to recognize that however frustrating I find my projects, everybody else is going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, I've had abject failures, right? And I'm just like, oh, that was a waste of a week or something. And so yeah, the trick is to realize that early on and just keep learning from it and keep doing
Yeah.
it. I hope that other people don't see, you know, like, oh, I could never do that. Of course you can, you know, but you're gonna go through a lot of time and frustration before you do,
Mhm.
but so did I.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a great question here, which I
Okay.
suspect you might have some thoughts on.
Oh,
Any tips or hints on how to film or photograph LED projects?
so hard. No, you know, I would if you've got some good ones, let me know. Yes, it's backlighting. It is this LED. acrylic, like that's on that grid right there,
Mhm.
is a really nice product. It's I think it's Tap Plastics LED acrylic. If that's the kind of project you're doing, which seems to diffuse the color without, diffusion helps. And it really does let the color shine through without kind of the glare.
Mhm.
But if it's a pinpoint light, like my blob, this blob over here is displaying beautiful patterns to my eyes, and he's
Just wait
completely
to us. Yeah.
saturated. Yeah, he's completely saturated. He's just right. He's Casper the Friendly Ghost. So it's really tricky. You need a lot of backlight, I think a good camera, and I don't have really specific tricks. I know, but point lights are much harder than diffuse light.
Yeah.
You need to have good diffuse ambient lighting. I've found also because a lot of my projects use acrylic, which is in it, and the reflections, like in my glasses, are very
Mhm.
hard to deal with as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
diffuse
It's
lighting
it's
and
quite tricky, you know,
yeah,
if you have the environment's too dark and the LEDs are just completely blown out and they look white or just like a
right.
spot, big huge halos effectively around them. If the environment's too bright, the LEDs just disappear into nothingness, and
That's correct. Yes.
it's so frustrating.
You can get, you can make the best of that by choosing, there's a difference, in the LED community, what you can choose like APA 102. If you don't use the neopixels, if you use the dot star, which is the colloquial term, if you use
Mhm.
the APA 102, you have much more color depth. So
Okay.
you can go to,
You can
because
turn them down.
you can turn them down and retain the color differentiation, and
Yeah.
that does make a difference. That grid again is APA 102, as is, that's actually why this looks so nice too. These have a much greater color depth than, like, generally neopixels at low brightness don't retain that kind of nice color differentiation. So choosing different LEDs for your projects can help as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, you're right. Yeah, the blob is, yeah, most of my projects film like the blob too. It help, the trick is if you have so many of them that they all blow out your screen, I think that can help. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a one. Yeah, a really
No,
good system.
it's a very tricky topic, and I think, to be honest, multiple exposures is one of the most effective things that I found.
Really.
But then you're getting into sort of the bigger cameras or the more expensive, more professional inverted comma cameras, because then
And you
you
can't
can
do dynamic pattern. You can't take a snapshot of a dynamic pattern then as a multiple
exactly,
exposure
absolutely,
requires, you can't, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
everything I want to do is dynamic. So
yeah, yeah.
that's a challenge too.
Really good question. Thanks, Axwax.
Yeah, it
Great.
is.
Well, I think that might be the end. Unless there's anything else you'd like to talk about.
No, but thank
Yeah.
you so much. This
Yeah.
has been, it's been really fun to discuss all my favorite topics. Thank you
Thank you
for
so much for coming in. And
letting me share.
yeah, thank you. And your study looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. It's my happy place. I have
Yeah.
created my happy place in here. Yes.
It's really, really fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you very much, Deborah, for coming on this week. Next week, we're talking to Matthew Venn about ASICs and possibly music, that sort of thing. And I will see you all soon. Bye.